Our first family business story today is about Taylor Pipe Support. It's about a business that really started, it's in its fourth generation now, as a farm implement company, but that today manufactures a whole range of steel products. So our speaker today is going to present his story, and I think that, again, we'll get some great insights into what it takes and perhaps some alternative thoughts on exactly what it takes to be successful in multi-generations. Please join me in providing a warm welcome to our next speaker, Mr. Alan Taylor.
So let's start at the beginning. And we'll talk about a day in 1959, February 20th. It's a cold Friday. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, rather than the typical siren to end the shift, there was a different sound and an announcement for all of the staff and workers within this factory to put down their implements, their calipers, their tools, to quietly pack up their personal belongings and to leave. And this was the Avro Aircraft Company in Moulton, where my father was an engineer. And it was the day that the Beef and Baker government shut down the Avro Aero program. Now, part of that, my dad had some exposure to the family company. My great uncle Wilson Collins, at the time, was running a company called Collins Never Fail Products, and they manufactured galvanized watering cans and minnow pails. And there have been the odd occasion where, during picnics or company or family dinners, that my dad was approached. He had a special, real talent for understanding how something could be made and something that could be made better, cheaper, faster. And my Uncle Wilson, great Uncle Wilson, recognized that talent. But my dad wasn't really, he was very, very much involved in the aircraft side. But on that fateful afternoon, a word went out that my dad was unemployed. And a few weeks later, my great Uncle Wilson sat him down and said, "Eric, we'd like you to join the company." And there was lots of reasons why he would stay, with family being in the Toronto area. So he did. Even those colleagues, many of them, as many of you know, went on to form the basis of the NASA space program. So I want to just pause here, and what I'll do is, in this story, I'm going to take a quick moment to chirp a little bit about the family business systems that we sometimes employ. And one of the myths that I want to debunk is the myth that family businesses fail more often than non-family businesses. You'll often hear this so-called statistic that second to third generation is really risky because the odds of those businesses making it are so much lower than first to second. And the reality is that businesses start and fail at exactly the same rate, whether they're family or non-family. And while statistically, just by the numbers, a third and fourth generation businesses sometimes fail, and their odds of succeeding on paper look lower, it's got nothing to do with the third and fourth generation that's involved. It's simply the lifespan of a business. And yet we lay this huge amount of obligation, legacy, threat, concern. And I certainly felt that. But we'll get back to that in a moment. 1986, I am in what was supposed to be my first year of graduate school. I was excited to get started. Unusually, because normally those days I didn't have cell phones, I wasn't going to get a text, it was the old-fashioned answering machines. But I got home from school, and there was this note sort of tagged to my front door. And it was, "Call your father." Well, that didn't sound very good. But I did what I was told and jumped on the phone and gave him a phone call. It was during the day. And he said just 3 things to me. And as he said this, I kind of had this feeling that my future was starting to change. He said, "Alan, we have a problem." His right-hand man, not an equity partner, but certainly his right-hand man had taken on a very, very severe case of Alzheimer's disease. And there had been sort of indications that there were problems, but at this point in time, he'd said, "We have to make a change, and we need your help." It was not really a request. It wasn't "would you think about it?" It was, "when are you going to be home?" And it talks about I bring that up because we've all had those conversations, or you may have that conversation, or you may think you want to have that conversation. And I certainly would have appreciated at the time, let's come home, talk about the options, and see what we should do. But there wasn't that conversation. It was, you're coming home. I'm going to leave that one up there for a moment. But I want to just say, I've been privileged and I've been honored to work at the family company. It wasn't that I'm complaining about the opportunity. I think the process of having an open conversation with that next generation before you make a specific decision or request to see what kinds of options are really on the table. But now let's talk about the touring event. I was at the company at this point for about 7 years. A brief anecdotal story. I gotta speed this up. I'm running out of time. I knew this would happen. Fast track. I found out that my father was ill at Summer Cottage one summer and pleaded with him to get some treatment. And I found out because he was suffering from colon cancer and the evidence was in the morning toilet bowl. And he was embarrassed and ashamed but stubborn. Said he would get to it when he was back down in the city in September, and this was a conversation we had in June. Well, in 1993, after I'd been in the company for quite some time, in a matter of 4 months, we went from diagnosis to death. And in that 4 months, there were lots of conversations that took place between my father and his advisors, but very few conversations between my father and the rest of us in the family. Again, I'll frame this as we missed an opportunity as a family to sit down and talk about what those options might be. He was a strong leader. He was a strong believer that you lead from the top and you lead with conviction. But that left some conversations undone that I think would have been helpful. So a couple weeks after he died, the meeting was called. His lawyer, our company lawyer, sat us down. And I want to give you the mood. It was a room not unlike this. It was cold, devoid of character. And we knew we were going to be read effectively what his wishes were. And his wishes were effectively boiled down to this. All the assets of the family, the cottages, and all the rest of it goes to your mother, which was an expected outcome. The business. The business is to be sold to one of two buyers. Either an outside buyer or Alan. Now, to put this into context, I'm the youngest of three. My brother and my sister at the time were working in the company. They've both been there for, quite some time. And they were not impressed, I can tell you to say the least. That room was not a comfortable place for me to be, and it was not a comfortable place for any of us to be. Jumping into another myth, not unrelated to the first, that succession means handing down. I titled this speech, "Why My Kids Will Never Say That They're Still Running Dad's Business." And that is because, in my personal belief, and my personal opinion, is that we cannot and should not assume that that's what the outcome should always be. I felt a little bit of obligation to honor my father's wishes, because that was his preferred option, as it was explained to all of us in the room. The conversations that ensued afterwards around the family were that I had some sort of influence over that decision, which was painful for all of us, but certainly painful for me. To this day, I'll get to that in a moment, there are some outcomes to that decision that my father made and the way that it was unfolded. So the current state of affairs. So I've told you a little bit about the background. And so you can imagine from a character shot, this is what it feels like in the Taylor family right now. The business is successful. We've been fortunate with that. There's been no shortage of financial success. The overall structure of the company is sound. But we don't have Christmas together. In fact, my sister and brother haven't seen my mother in over 20 years. Actually, that's not true. Over 15 years. I haven't spoken to my brother face-to-face for 2. My sister is a recovering alcoholic in Baltimore living by herself. We don't get together. And that's largely because of the decisions that were made. Instead of open conversations, opportunities to describe family values, the family vision, where do we all fit, What's the role for my brother? What's the role for my sister? What's the role for me? What choices would we make? Because I didn't really want to be in this business. Again, I don't want to sound like a spoiled brat or someone that doesn't appreciate the opportunity that I got. But if actually asked, if we've been put in a room and asked, what do you guys want to do? Here's this business. It's got lots of potential, but what's your real passion? What are your views? What do you want to accomplish in life? And how can we fit this in? Do you need to run it? Can you maybe just be an owner and an investor? Can you play a role? Do you want out? I believe if we'd had those conversations, I would still have a family that was together. So when I look towards the future and what I'm doing at this stage of my life, as I look towards the future of this company and our family, I'm trying to build in processes at the front end of our planning that have nothing to do with technical plans, nothing to do with tax planning, no offense, Mitch, but conversations, starting, well, not quite with my 4-year-old, he's a little too early, although he has opinions, but my 20-year-olds, who actually would be here today, except that they're at school. And we are just talking about what they want to do with their lives, and how can our company and our family support those goals and objectives. And if one of them puts up their hand and says, I'm passionate about metal processing, I'm passionate about what that business is about, then we start the integration of what they might be able to learn and contribute to the company. But we don't start with that as the goal. The goal for me is to create opportunities for the rest of my family, both in terms of financial success, but personal success. So I guess the message that I want, and I'm not going to take all the time that I have because it's a fairly simple message, it is to have those really important conversations when it comes to the planning process. There's no shortage of technical experts that can provide whatever you need from a point of view of a technical solution. I think what's missing, and what we often overlook, is the skills and the soft approach. We call it soft, it's actually the hard part. But the piece of the puzzles that are the relationships and the intentions of the family. Have those conversations early. I think when I was writing my speech, I closed with this, so I'm going to read it. It is to start with the conversations, end with the technical plans. The magic is in the process, not in the conclusion. Thank you very much.